Lionel, is that you?
There, I think I got it.
Here we go.
Here we go. Dave.
Lionel.
Dave.
It is good to hear your voice once again, my friend.
I have a problem, Dave. Oh, today is I believe today is June the 14th. Monday, June the 14th, which means Rich Winiski. Rich Winiski is now a Patreon member, by the way.
I was informed of that. I congratulated him. He laughed. I said, you know how that's going to work for me? I'm going to get a case of beer for it. And he said, well, I don't want a case of beer. I said, well, then you're going to be all right. I just talked to him this afternoon. My good friend Rich, somebody I look up to in a lot of ways. He's got some exciting things planned for the summer. He's going to be in Chama. He's going out to Chama, which he's done for years,
right,
to be part of one of the work crews where he goes out and restores a piece of equipment as part of the Friends of the Cumbres and Toltec. He's driving the country back east with a friend of his, but he'll be driving from Denver to Chama via the last semaphores in mainline service in North America with his son, Andrew, who's a regular on the OC. Good kid. Right. Really nice guy. Another Eagle Scout. Rich is an Eagle. I'm an Eagle. Andrew's an Eagle. It's so we have a lot in common. Just good people. But Rich, I'm glad you did it because the archives are fascinating. It's an endless trove of treasure.
Yeah, I figured out the other day that there's 8,000 hours. Or something.
You could spend a lot of time being bored listening to the AML.
Yeah.
And in it are absolute gems. You have a cross section of not just the hobby but the whole industry, and it's here for people to listen to.
Yeah, we haven't even got close to scratching the surface.
It's wonderful. It's a great start.
What do you mean you could be bored listening to the AML? What is that? What was that? Was that some sort of backhanded compliment?
Yeah. Yeah. What else could it be?
Yeah, exactly. All right. All right. So tonight we're going to do something I've never done. This is Monday, June the 14th, 2021. This is ViewerMail Flight number 82. And I'm sure you've listened to all the previous 81 of the ViewerMail flights.
Of course, yes.
Have you ever listened to ViewerMail?
Yes.
Really?
Once.
Oh, okay. Cool. Good for you.
Yeah, there was one where you guys were talking about Jason Strawn a year ago. It was a while ago.
Okay.
I listened to a good chunk of that, yes.
Have you ever seen, I've started in January, I started where I put up a little 2 or 3 minute montage of all the photos from fans, the fans page over the previous month. Have you seen any of those?
I have.
Oh, okay.
In passing on Facebook, yes.
Did you watch the last one?
I did not watch the last one yet.
Well, the last 25 seconds is all about the signals in your book. What's it called?
Wonderful. And I thank you for the support. You were the only one that called it right. I love it.
What, you mean it's sold out? You can't get it?
29 days.
29 days. What did we learn here, Dave?
That I need to listen to you more.
There you go. So anyways, the last 25 seconds is a bunch of people holding up your book when they got it. And it's a bunch of photos of that. And it finishes with a photo of you standing at your layout. And then this month, I've just finished up the month of April. And it starts with 20 seconds of other people who've got your book. I think every person on the planet got your book.
Most of the AML certainly did. And it means a great deal to me. It means a great deal to me. I did not think that a book about a small piece of our large and growing hobby would necessarily have been the bestseller, but it wasn't just a bestseller. It's the bestseller that Kalmbach has seen in 40 years.
Yeah. And who told you that might be a possibility?
This guy. I think his name might have been Simon.
Yeah, I'm sticking that feather in my cap. That's not the last. That's
As
not,
well you
yeah.
should, sir. As
All right.
well you should. No, I mean, what a joy. What an absolute honor. I've always, and this is part, it's funny. This is all part of the reflection. I go being 40 and, and being an average white guy in a 40, being 40 in this modern world, as the internet has exploded, social media is in full flight, reality is subject to what you want to believe. But yet overwhelmingly, when you look at the numbers, things are getting better for almost everybody worldwide. So what a unique time. And it's given me a tremendous amount of things to think about, a lot of pause. And this book, the immediate success of it, the second printing is due the end of July at this point with some corrections. Nothing earth shattering, but some,
I'll tell you one correction. My name's not in it. Not anywhere. How many pages is it? 144. You couldn't find one sentence to go. And of course, when I used to read the articles Lionel Strang wrote back in the late 90s and early 2000s, but no, nothing. Not even a mention. Not even a little teeny tiny, millimeter size headshot. Anything. Nothing.
Where was the signal on your layout?
I don't know. You could have found something. You could have.
Well,
I was crushed.
I'm excited for you to read a little bit of the Yard book, which is already under discussion, because this one, the best part about the Yard book,
there's another book.
There's another book, and the contract has I have yet to see the contract, and so I'm, we have to be patient. But my understanding is that it's absolutely coming. It just needs to be drafted up the rest of the way and sent along. But the next book will be on yard design, and yard concept and some yard operation. And I intend to make it a similar view where we take a giant butcher knife and we slice right through the sinew of all of what railroading is. And we look at the size and the concept and the origin and the future and the why of yards, staging yards, passenger yards, freight yards, fiddle yards, why something's visible and why it's not, why it's even there in the first place. Who cares? Well, we're going to explore all that. And one of the things that I remember growing up in the 90s or 80s really, but coming of age in the 90s anyway, and about the Allegheny and Lackawanna Southern, your railroad, is that you had some really compelling scenes by the yard office. And there's a lot of pictures of an RS1, with people doing what they're doing with the RS1 in a caboose next to the yard office with the yard behind. So we need to discuss that. Actually, I'm excited to weave that into the narrative, which I think is going to be more applicable to more of the hobby. Although I've learned not to trust myself on this, because I didn't think signals was going to be applicable to most of the hobby, and it definitely was.
Yeah. Well, you know what? If I had a say in what. One thing I did right was like three-parter for when I was doing the column, and one of my towns I took out a coal mine, and instead I inserted a 3-track yard that could hold a lot more cars, and I used that trick where you put a mirror in a tunnel at the end of the yard, and it increased a ton of operation, because I had the typical, you went into this yard and there's a little coal tipple and a couple of tracks, and it would hold maybe 10 or 12 or 14 cars. Well, then I got the idea. I forget where I got the idea from, but I got it from somebody where, the tracks go off. You can have a track that, gives the impression that it goes into an industry and place to spot cars. And so I took the tipple out and put in 3-track yard that was, maybe 6-7 feet long, which increased the capacity. And it was basically a drop. You drop the cars here and they would be taken off to another place. And it was,
so basically, yeah, and it's funny. Like a recent trip, a good friend of mine, John Kays, and I have made a couple trips down to the hollers, down to West Virginia, extreme southwestern Virginia proper, North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. He loves the coal fields, and I'm happy to tag along and be part of that experience. He's one of these guys where you can trust each and every detail that he puts together for the thing. He's a professional railroader. He works for Amtrak as a locomotive engineer. And he does impeccable research on these rail fen trips. So he knows the radio frequencies. He knows the block stations. He knows where you get a track warrant versus where it's CTC versus where it's, dark territory and it's just yard limits. He knows the lingo. He listens to the scanner feeds, on his drives to and from Harrisburg for work. So even though he's not going to be down there until months and months and months or a year away, he listens and hears the track warrants and hears the dispatchers talk, knows the crew's voices. And so in an age of dwindling coal, this guy is a master of finding where the coal trains are. And so I go down there and we have these incredibly productive trips. The last two, unfortunately, have been in the pouring rain for 3 days, which has been frustrating. But part of Appalachia kind of is the pouring rain, right? I mean, you can get some really moody shots down there, and I have. So I've got a bunch of really cool stuff for this next yard book, which will be a lot of fun, which I think ties into the ALS. We need, do you either have the slides? I mean, MR certainly has the scans. I need to take, I'd love to include some of that in this book because, that's one of the cool things about yards is they're ubiquitous across railroading. They're like the rail or the tie. Every railroad's got a yard, every single one. You don't have a railroad without a yard.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a whole new level, I think, of history and a whole new level of fundamentalism in railroading. If we can establish a foundation of the history of yards and why yards exist and what makes a yard in railroading, we can tie that to model railroading, and it's something that's applicable to everybody that has a layout or everybody that even wants to think about designing a layout. So I think it could be a far more popular book than Signals, which is saying quite a bit at this point.
Yeah, seeing as how Signals is a bestseller in 40 years.
29 days. I still can't believe. I'm so grateful to the AML Nation for the support and the encouragement and the, support without any reservations at all. Everybody has. It's what you'd hope for an operating session where everybody comes and jumps in with both feet and is proud to put a crazy photo of them with the book, online. Yes, this is modeling railroading. If you want to model railroading, this is how you do it. You jump in. You don't worry about what other people are thinking or saying.
Exactly.
But that's a lot easier said than done.
But that's not why we're here.
Not why we're here.
No. So we have to get back on track. And as you know, each edition of Viewer Mail comes with advanced owner technology. You're aware of that, I'm sure. Please, and everybody, yeah. Well, I saw that on a Mazda commercial once, and it said each Mazda comes with advanced owner technology, and I'm thinking that's brilliant. They just threw that in there. It means nothing.
It's like each of your customers.
Yeah.
Don't you approach each of your customers with new rider technology? I mean,
yeah, exactly. And please hold your applause until all the introductions have been completed, which is going to be pretty simple tonight. It's me, Lionel, the evil overlord, and if by now you've probably realized it's our buddy. It's the always fun to have around, the guy you can always count to burn your hot dogs at the barbecue. He's always play Frisbee with you. He's always if you got a game going, he'll grab a stick. And if you don't have a game going, he'll grab a stick and get a game going. It's everybody's favorite. It's Uncle Dave Abelies.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, everyone.
And as with all viewer mail flights, this one is sponsored by Jim Lincoln Chevrolet. That's Jim Lincoln Chevrolet in Clinton, Massachusetts, on the High Street extension, just down the road from Fuller Field, and across the street from
I've never listened to this part of it.
The Dairy Queen. There's
well, of course.
And everybody else other than me is supposed to say, the Dairy Queen.
The Dairy Queen. Now, what's interesting is that I shouldn't say that. What I think is interesting is that Dairy Queen, a lot like Friendly's, remember the fast food franchise Friendly's?
Yeah.
They've evaporated across much of the United States, but they're still very common in New England.
Yeah, they have evaporated in a lot of places. They're in Florida and they've thinned out. But I was
here and there.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I personally saved Dairy Queen in the 80s because when I worked for the railroad and I was driving trucks for Canadian National Railway, there was a Dairy Queen not far from where I would go most days, and I would pull in there, and I almost every day would have a small well, probably more like a medium or large back then, seeing as I was a young, handsome, strapping young man. And I would order a Blizzard. And I personally saved the Blizzard from extinction. And because of that, Dairy Queen would manage to continue on.
It was a mission from God, and you embraced it. And thank goodness that you did, because now Dairy Queen is here for me to take my kids to.
Yeah, and if
it wasn't for you, if it wasn't
for me, there would be no Dairy Queen for you to take your kids to.
There'd be no Blizzard. There'd be no, Oreo Blizzard.
Nope, there wouldn't be. Or Reese's Peanut Butter Cup Blizzard.
Or Reese's. Yes, I've never understood the peanut butter and chocolate thing. I don't get it.
It's very.
I love peanut butter and I love chocolate, but I'm not. I don't know. So anyway, so thank you for having saved Dairy Queen.
Yes, and
thank you to Jim for the sponsorship. Thank you. It's wonderful.
Yeah, he continues. He's had a little bit of trouble. Car sales were a little soft, and then he almost lost his dealership. But there's when he bought it, he went out and he bought a Jack Roush Ford pickup, and there was a lot of confusion with head office. But and the other crazy thing was when I used to buy these Blizzards, I got to know the people at the counter because I went in every day for 2 or 3 years. And I said to them, once they realized I had saved Dairy Queen and the Blizzard, they were very thankful. And I said, crazy enough, years and years, decades from now, I'm going to help a guy sell his book so well that it'll be the fastest. It'll sell out in 29 days.
You were my first huge supporter with this, and the only one that was right. Yeah. So I hope you'll join me on the yard book quest. I think we'll do it again here in 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
It takes that long to put a good book together. I've already got a good head start on this because I learned a lot from the last one. But
and we're going to do we're going to do a podcast about your trips to West Virginia. And word on the street is other editors from other publishing companies have contacted you and to see if you'd be interested in doing books for them.
No, I was humbled and all smiles and super excited when Tony Cook reached out to me. So Tony, thank you. And Tony asked, what other things I might have ideas, about. We discussed that back and forth, and I got a thumbs up from him. And I did mention the fact that I'm going to be under contract for this yard book, and I think that certainly sets a sort of a longer timeline than may have otherwise been possible. But hey, this is the great wide open. And in the great wide open is my favorite rock artist, my favorite musician ever, Tom Petty, says, it's the great wide open, man. Anything is possible. And I'm going to keep doors open until they're not open any longer. And I'm just happy to be here. Otto Vondrack, Tony at White River Productions have both been real supporters of the Onondaga Cutoff and of what we stand for and what we're trying to build here. Just like Eric White and Carl Swanson at Model Railroader. I really feel very thankful for the support from different people in the publishing industry. And I'm just very grateful to be able to contribute to both at this point and be of service to this hobby, which has floated my boat for my whole life. I'm very, very lucky, and getting into my 40s, my mid 40s. We've got 3 small kids that are healthy and happy and wonderful. I've got a beautiful wife who puts up with me, but is compelling and intelligent and pushes me in the right ways and challenges me to be honest about my intentions and my feelings, but then supports me when I make mistakes. It's a privilege. I've got, we joke about my wisdom keepers. This is the Jacks and the Riches and the Heaths and my brother Ben, all these people that have, woven in and out of my time, but even in more recent times, the Jerry Deedsiks, you, Lionel, people that are good, sound people that are willing to give me the kind of constructive criticism that I need to grow, knowing that I'm not going to be happy to hear it.
Well, that brings us to tonight's subject, the word criticism. That brings us to why we're doing this particular podcast. This is a special edition of Viewer Mail. So we did get. I'm sorry, I cut you off there, Dave.
No, let's go. Here we go.
Which is kind of what this is about.
Yep. And we'll go back and forth. And please cut me off because you know me. I'm very quiet.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't have lots of opinions on anything.
So we got this email, and I forwarded it on to you because I was concerned and also wanted to hear your opinion of it. And then we talked a little bit back and forth by text, and I said, you know what? We need to talk about this on the podcast because you and I both have a lot of compelling thoughts about what the hobby offers to people and everything. And I thought, well, let's just do this, right? And this is on the free channel, so everybody can hear it. And I thought, well, this will be a fun thing. You and I can have one of our, because we don't record everything, but we do often have compelling chats about life in general. And I thought, well, let's just do this right on the air and let's let everybody hear our discussion.
Yeah, this is the first time you and I have talked live about this particular topic. And
Yes.
we've been back and forth in text. We had a couple great emails. And I don't normally wait to respond to emails, as you know. Because I feel I owe people the respect of responding immediately. My immediate response to this one was, I'm going to take a few days to think about this. There's a lot here. Thank you for sharing. And you got right back to me and said, take your time. And so here we are.
Yeah. And oddly enough, your emails are quite a bit longer than mine.
Shocking. Scandalous.
Yeah. All right. So this is a viewer mail from a fellow named Steve Eckert, Eckert. And he goes on and he says, constructive criticism. Never ever put your questions ahead of fascinating storytelling, such as Dave and Jack's. They kept us entertained despite getting cut off and chastised, especially during the second half of part 2. That was tough to listen to. Some humorous ribbing is okay, and in fact encouraged. It's your trademark after all. But this was crossing over the line into embarrassing. 3 episodes or 10. Who cares how long it takes for them to say everything? Who cares how long it takes them to say everything they have to say? They're gold. Let them talk. And Steve says, and again, just constructive criticism. Take it for what it's worth. Steve Eckert. And that's it. So then I thought, I listened to, I'm interested in what everybody's opinion, and follow it. And I was concerned because I'll go first. I was concerned because when I started this podcast, I said to I always say the joke. I started it to listen because I'm fascinated by the sound of my own voice. And that's basically true. But the real reason I started this podcast is I thought, this might be fun. Period, end of sentence. There was no grand plan. There was no, if I do this, this will happen. I'm not one of those kinds of guys. So I thought, this might be fun to do this. And as the years have gone, and of course it's way more popular than I ever could have imagined. And so as the years have gone by, I've met lots of fascinating people. And there wasn't that long ago, we interviewed a fellow named Lauren James who owns Otter Valley Railroad in Tillsonburg, Ontario. Tillsonburg.
He says you want to work in the tobacco fields of Tillsonburg. Tillsonburg. My back still aches when I hear that word.
But I thought to myself after that, I thought, all along I can't do this if I have to be somebody other than me. And I know sometimes I get carried away, and sometimes I get frustrated, and sometimes maybe I'm ribbing people too much. But that's kind of me at the end of the day, It's kind of like, I was the opposite of I'm the opposite of you. You did. You went to Syracuse University. I left high school, most likely not to succeed. And so I've kind of flown, I kind of run by the seat of my pants my whole life. And so there's, I was very interested in your thoughts on this because I felt bad if I did go across the line. I certainly didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But you guys were, you guys talked. And it wasn't, and I don't when I start ribbing somebody, it's not because I think they're not intelligent or whatever. To me, it was cute. What you and Jack were doing was cute, and it was just, I was thinking, man, these guys are just. And I would throw. You guys were so. You get the thing about you, Dave, is you're sincere, and yet you're genuine. So you can take it. You can take it. I like giving each, guys. I'm one of those guys. It's one of the things I miss the most about Boston Joe. Is him and I would chirp at each other just endlessly.
And it's one of the things that I've always looked up to, again, and it's funny because of the pandemic. You and I should have spent a lot of nights having some beers and ciders and figuring out how the hobby is going to go forward. We should have met a year ago, but because of the COVID, here we are. Right. So it's a strange delayed relationship between you and I. That's only through, Joe Cummings' studio. It's only through the podcast, which is, and I met you on a referral. It was Wisniewski that said, you've got to listen to this guy. You're really going to kick out of Lionel. And so here we are. So you look at all that. And for me, look, part 2 of that trilogy was difficult. I look at that trilogy, and this is part of what I sent you in the email. And it's all of this stuff. One of the weird parts about being in your mid 40s with with all of your tangible mentors having passed away or left your life, right? And that's no fault. I'm not. It's not a pity story. My dad died from cancer, but he died walking the family dog with a massive heart attack. He died a happy man, right? Paul, his older brother, died in Australia, in Adelaide, in the Adelaide Hills, while working on his empty cistern ahead of the winter rains, because that's what they used to water the property to prevent the wildfires, which everybody's familiar with now from the news in the last couple of years in South Australia. He slipped on the ladder, fell, 82 years old, big old pot belly, which I'm working on here a little bit as I'm turning 40. He was 82, hit the ground head first. That was the end of that. And he had gone through open heart surgery, which my dad obviously needed, but my dad refused to go to the doctor because he hated the doctor after the way they treated my sister, and he didn't like the way my mom had gone. And so Pete Abele Sr. made a decision. So we finally convinced him to go to the doctor. He was going on Thursday, died on Tuesday morning. Massive heart attack. They would have caught it Thursday. They would have sent him to the hospital because he wasn't himself. He knew he wasn't himself. And I wonder if he didn't walk himself extra hard because he did not trust the people that he was going to see. We'll never know. I do know that I'm damned lucky to be who I am and to have had him as a father and to have had my mom as a mother. The foundation that they built, the foundation that everyone listening here can build for their kids in the first couple years, the first 5-10 years. Yeah, it's the hardest work you'll ever do. It's thankless work at that age, except for the occasional hugs and snuggles, which are wonderful, but it's a lot more work than that. But if you build that foundation, it's like if you build it, they will come. If you build that foundation, and my parents built it for me, you know what? I miss them every day, both of them. I miss my sister every day. But the memories and the lessons and the tangible, the atmosphere that they brought with them is something that I can still smell and taste and feel. And it still carries me and it still moves me. And these are things that we have to learn to carry. So, when you forwarded me this email and you opened yourself, to me to say, hey, what do you think about this? And look, I was damned frustrated with part 2. Part 1 was great. To hear you and Bruce, push Jack's buttons a little bit. And Jack is an introverted guy. He'll probably never listen to this. I don't know. Jack, he's always beaten to his own drummer. You never know what Jack's going to do until he does it, which is one of the reasons I'm so gracious to him for his involvement with the OC. Because if it was, as we've talked about, without him, the artistry of the operation, the reason that Lionel Strang can come to the OC and have a good time in the same room as the most hardcore timetable train order operator can come to the OC and have a good time is because there is literally, by design, something for everyone on this railroad. It's my vision, but it's Jack that made it come together.
And that's going to be the test. I waffle back and forth between, am I going to go? Do I want to go? Maybe I won't go. And because I'll watch your live events and I'll see something and I'm thinking, they're doing the radio chatter and they're doing it right, and I won't fit in because I won't have the chatter right, and blah 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 blah. And I go back and forth, and trying to decide if I even want to go, and yet you and I seem to have so much in common in just general day-to-day life that we can't really stop talking. Do you know if Jack listened to any of this? Any of this?
Jack,
yeah.
He listened to all his podcasts, yes.
And what did he have anything to say?
He was frustrated at the end of part 2, just like I was.
Okay. And see, one of the reasons I wanted to have this discussion on the podcast is one of the things people probably don't realize is I barely remember part 2. I remember me giving you guys the gears the entire way through. I don't remember anything in particular about any of the parts other than, the story kept kind of going here and there. And then I'd say, so, okay, after you guys were skipping into the first day into New Jersey Transit and stuff like that, I don't really remember much about it because I do so many of these podcasts. It's like, how can you remember?
I agreed. You are the, if you want to look at it if you zoom back, right? If you zoom back, you zoom out. No one writes a book. No one writes an article. No one does a podcast. No one writes or sings a song. All of the experience in life you are a conduit for that experience, for the passion, and arguably the spirit. And I'm a big believer. Okay. And I'm not a huge religious person, never have been, but you can't be if you're raised by Catholics and Jews and you're a cashew. What do you believe? which way do you go? So, but what that does is that I've always sort of had a skeptical view of the human intervention in religion because I don't think religion is anything more than a way to approach the spirit, God or the Almighty, the energy, whatever you'd like to call it. The Native Americans called it the spirit, whatever. What you call it doesn't matter. What matters is that everyone needs a conduit, right, to tap into something that's larger than them, the community. And for us on the AML is part of our community. It's a big part of our community. But we're part of the model railroading community, which is part of the railroad hobby, the rail fans, the historians, and the modelers, all rolled into one, which is part of people that are passionate about anything: music, buses, trains, military equipment, camping, fishing, you name it, right? Every guy's got something that he's passionate about. Each of those is a way to access, to me, that higher energy. How do you focus that and bring it down? Well, the way you do it is through the AML. It's through this podcast. And before that, it was writing articles and being a member of the staff at Model Railroader. Like, going to these meets, going to operating sessions. Look, is there ego involved? Yes, there is. And, none of us are without ego. We're human beings, and that's part of who we are. But ego craves distinction.
Well, and it's ego. It's ego that drives people like you and I. I always make the joke, I got an ego the size of a Buick. I don't really know how big my ego is, but like, as much as I'm disappointed that I might have made you and Jack feel bad, I also have no ability to be somebody else on this podcast and do it as much as I do. It just isn't going to work. And the other thing too that is important is I wouldn't have given you guys the gears if I didn't think you guys were good guys. I just wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't. In one way, you could say it's a compliment because I'm thinking, well, these guys can take it. They're not gonna, they're not gonna all of a sudden turn on me and I didn't really think I was doing much other than steering the ship, anyways. But
I'm going to say that Jack and I, we're both overthinkers in a way. I'm excitable. I jump in. I keep saying I jump in with both feet. I will make a statement and then pay for my sin rather than wait to think about what I have to say and miss the opportunity. I would rather get it out there and go back and forth. And the reason for that is not because I think my opinion is the most important in the room at all. I actually, the way my brain works, I need to make a statement so that I can hear the feedback and then adjust my point of view based on the feedback from people that I trust and people that I respect. And so while ego craves distinction, and this is something I think it's important to discuss tonight, there's a wonderful book called Blue Highways by an author, William Least Heat Moon. He's a Native American guy, mixed Native American, I think, and white from Missouri. This book was written back in I want to say late 70s, early 80s. I haven't read it in a while, but my buddy Heath turned me on to it before some of our Western trips that we took in the early 2000s. And it was a book he'd read before. But this guy went through a life change, divorce, lost his job, and rather than desperation, he took the savings that he had left after this terrible divorce from a Cherokee woman that he had married. He ripped out the seats in his white Ford van. I think it was a Ford van, full-size van, whether it was Ford or Dodge or whatever, doesn't matter, and put in some plywood, a foam mattress for a bed, a place for a camping stove and a couple propane tanks, and a tank of water and a little refrigerator, and decided he was going to drive until he found out what was going on with him. And he drove from Missouri to, I don't remember the total length of the trip, but it was Missouri to the West Coast. Then it was all the way up to the Pacific Northwest, all the way back across like North Dakota, back down through Chicago, and the reason it's called Blue Highways is that he deliberately avoided the interstates. Instead, he had the old DeLorme books, the old map books, where the U.S. highways, not the interstates. The interstate was a system that was added later in the United States in the 50s and 60s. Eisenhower administration, sort of a long story. But the highways that existed before are the interstates that went through the towns instead of around them, that had stoplights instead of overpasses and grade separation. This is your US 11s, US 22s, US 1, US 2. The 50, 40, 30, and one of my favorites is US 6, and Rich Wisniewski joins me in that. It's both of our favorite highways. US 2 that goes across the extreme northwest of the United States, within a stone's throw of the Canadian border for a good chunk of the route, coast to coast. So he traveled all the blue highways, and these U.S. highways are what came up in blue on his maps from the 70s, because he wanted to taste America. He wanted to learn what he was missing and see where he was lost. And one of the things he describes at one of his lowest points in the book, he's outside a small town called Sam Hill, which I believe is Montana or Washington. It's someplace on his jaunt back east from the Pacific Northwest, after going up through Astoria, up the Pacific Coast Highway, and the not I-5, but whatever I think it's US 90, whatever the blue highway is on the coast. I don't know. And he's like, boy, I was low. I'd been everywhere and seen everything until I realized I'd seen nothing and been nowhere. I was lower than low. And he goes on, it's the beginning of this chapter, and he's at this fake Stonehenge monument someplace in this place called Sam Hill. And he starts a new paragraph and he says, ego craves distinction. It craves singularity. It craves insularity, where it is alone the most important thing. And it wants people to look up to it and cherish it and cradle it. The antithesis of that for him was called self. And self, according to William Least Heat Moon, self craves union. Ego craves distinction. Self craves union. And this is a key point, I think, for what the AML is, also for what the Onondaga Cutoff is. And it's why I'm so drawn to what you've created in the AML. You, with all of your life experience, the ups and downs, the family good times and the family not good times, the business good times, the business not good times, the hobby good times and not good times, which we've all discussed, right? You're not satisfied with singularity. You're not satisfied with distinction. That's not what you are. It's not who you want to be. You want union. You bring people together, and you do it through the brashness and the ball busting. You do it through the open door that is the AML. And you do it, and you've done it over years. And it's funny because you and I, on similar roads, right, 20 years apart, but similar roads, we were much more brash when we were young. We had much more absolute goals and statements, and we were much more passionate about what we think we built ourselves. But now we're starting to see that it's not us. All we do is facilitate what others do. Yeah, we're just good at facilitating. We're good at facilitating.
I think you're better. You do a lot of cool stuff. I mean, I don't know. Like, I see what you're saying, and that was very short too. It wasn't long-winded. See, now this is the problem. I enjoy listening to you. I learned about William and Least Heat and Moon. This book has 4.5 stars on Amazon, and it's something I bet you a lot of people would enjoy. It's called Blue Highways: A Journey into American Paperback. Been out for 20 years, and it's just got endless one spectacular review after another on it. And that's the part of the podcast that I enjoy, is talking to people. I mean, the amount of stuff I have learned from this. Let's see, for me, talking to you and Jack was just fun. People say I'm ball busting and I'm this and that, and to me, it always just sounds like talking. It doesn't sound like you guys were going along, and I'm just like throwing in my 2 cents worth here and there, just like I said there. The thing that people need to understand is, if I didn't think you guys were quality guys, I would have cut it off at an hour and a half and said, thanks very much, and move along.
Sure. You got enough experience to be able to do that. But I think what's different about part 2 is that Jack specifically, I mean, look, you and I, we've done this a bunch of times now. I love to talk, but I kind of can read the room, and I can tell when I've gone a little bit too long. I think I've got a lot to offer, but I think that everybody has a time limit. Jack doesn't worry about what anybody thinks ever. Jack does, and he'll take time to get to where he needs to get to. One of the frustrating and difficult parts of the OC is that it's where it's gotten to is only possible because of the amount of passion and long, drawn out analytical thought that Jack puts into things. Now, Jack's not an extrovert like me. I get energy by talking to you or by talking to anyone. Jack, this costs Jack energy. That's what introverts do. For introverts to be social, it's not that they can't. They can do it just fine. Some of them are great at it, but it takes energy. They're exhausted when it's done.
Yeah,
for me,
I thought he was having a good time, though.
I thought he was, but I think that at the end of part 2, and this is where I think there was some merit to the email. I think that you had you knew what Jack was trying to say. You knew that he had some stuff to offer that you were going to learn from, and you wanted to hear it. And Jack kept developing the story, and it took hours to develop the story. And you know what makes good podcasting, and that's not it.
Yeah.
So you did it your normal way a couple times, and we didn't take the bait. And I'm, just Jack's my best buddy. So I'm along for the ride. This is great. I'm a co-interview. I don't give a shit. This is gonna be great. It's gonna be fine. So I kept rolling, and I didn't realize until later that you kept cutting him off, trying to sort of goad him into getting to the point. But Jack doesn't care about goading. Jack will pause and take the ribbing and then start where he stopped.
Yeah.
He doesn't. And I couldn't, this is after an hour and 40 minutes. I'm like, oh man, like this is Lionel keeps cutting him off before he makes his final point. Jack's about to say what he needs to say and move on. And then Lionel's trying to bust his balls to move on. And I was like, the third or fourth time that happened, I'm like, man, like, this is going to be hard to listen to. And it's not my podcast. I don't want to rain on the parade. So I think that's, but the fact that you sent me an inquiry on this, an honest email without editing, here it is. What do you think? Don't hold back. That speaks to your character. And I would argue that that's because you've read my character and Jack's character, and you know that we're good for it, right? This is not an ego contest. And this is the central point, I think. It's not, model railroading is not an ego contest. Good model railroading has nothing to do. Now, do we like the distinction? Of course. Do I feel good when I get a model railroader article or, 8,000 views on a Facebook video? Of course. But what I love about that is that means that many people have the ability to tap into what I'm trying to do. I want them to come along for the ride. Yeah. It's not because I think what I'm doing is great. It's because I want everybody to be along for the ride. It's your firehouse analogy is gold. I never thought of it that way, but that's exactly what this is.
Absolutely. You guys remind me of going to the firehouse as a kid. You guys, I mean, everybody has different personalities and stuff like that. And of course, I feel bad if I made Jack feel bad. I feel bad about that. I certainly wasn't trying to make him feel bad. The part I remember my eyes rolling in the back of my head when he got onto the fellow that was was it Rutgers, or I guess, and he was a modeler of some sort, and he's a drum guy and something like that.
Yeah, Lou Milan, his first boss at Transit.
Yeah, and he was trying to explain, and then he got on to all the things, and I'm thinking, we got to get off of this because we're gonna lose the room here, and so I mean, but you're right. I don't think most model railroaders, if you want to put, I think that's one of the great things about social media, which is one of the things we want to talk about, is that a lot of model railroaders aren't looking to say, look what I did and puff out their chest. They're more kind of looking to say, hey, look what I did. What do you think?
Well, and it's an interesting discussion because I think most of us fit that mold. I do think, and this is something I talked to John about on our trip down the hollers, which, again, was primarily a trip to spend time with John, see some coal trains, because you never know where that's going to go. That industry is really in some hard times. And also this time to take a bunch of pictures of yards and yard throats and yard operations for the future book. But one of the things that we started to unpack, he's like, Dave, and it was just the two of us for 4 days. And he said, Dave, like, one of the things I think that sets, some of us apart from others is that you've got professional railroaders that are rail fans, or professionals that are rail fans, where rail fanning is the hobby. And then you've got a few people who are professional rail fans, and they live in squalor, they work odd jobs, they do strange things, and rail fanning is the reason they get out of bed in the morning. And I was like, I never thought about that. And I said, John, like there's people, I see people on both sides of that fence that are fine, but I definitely see people on both sides of that fence that are a little hard to deal with, and people that, tend to be craving sort of distinction. And we talked a little bit about the ego versus self. Model railroading, I think, definitely has some people that are craving distinction. There's no question about it. But I think it's a much smaller population than those that crave community and
Absolutely.
union.
I think that's exactly what this podcast is about, and it's what you and I talk about all the time. I think this podcast is actually catering to the vast majority of people that are interested in this hobby. I mean, there's no doubt there's great model railroads, and there's a lot of guys who take it extremely seriously. But I think up until social media, the model railroading press catered primarily to those that took it to another level that a lot of people couldn't understand. The pictures were great, and I mean, but I truly believe that this podcast caters to the masses.
Well, and this is what you've see, and this is one of the things I love about you, my friend. I say that honestly. You have always been somebody who's refused to change who you are. You are a man of the masses. You don't have the Catholic school education and a frou-frou college, and no, you are a person that's pulled yourself up and it's worked really hard. You had good family growing up. You've had your trials and tribulations, and you fought through it, and you're a better man for it. And and this is the thing. Like, one of the things, and it's and Steve Eckert, I hope you're listening. I really genuinely appreciate your feedback to Lionel, because it opened up a dialogue between Lionel and I that I think this is good, honest stuff. And it's stuff that Lionel and I have talked about, but never verbatim. We saved this conversation for this podcast, for you guys and for you ladies who are listening to this particular podcast. This is special to me, and I think it is to Lionel as well. There's always room for improvement, not just in the hobby, but in life. And, honestly, I don't think Jack noticed part 2 versus part 3. He never said anything to me about it. It didn't bother him one bit. Oh, that's just part. It's okay. Part 3 ended fine. Like, he doesn't take things as personally as I do. He's got a thicker shell. And it's interesting because, I mean, that's a human dynamic. I mean, we've all got insecurities, and I wear mine a little bit more out in front. I would rather know about what's making people uncomfortable about me early. I'd rather hear it right up front. And even people that have really crossed the line with me, even lately, some as a result of the podcast, frankly, as we've talked about, I'm okay. I actually invite criticism like that. But when you cross the line, now you cross the line. When you cross the line, you cross the line. That's the game's over. But that aside, I want to know. I would rather know from people that know me pretty well. And I think there's a lot of AMLers that know me pretty well at this point, based on our conversations, based on the feedback. If I'm off base, I want to know about it. I'm not doing this because I think I'm the next coming of model railroading at all. Like I've loved trains since since before I remember. And next to music, it is the most important non-family thing in my life, hands down. Railroading, model railroading is part of literally everything that I do. I think about it when I'm with my kids. I think about it when I'm singing. I work for the railroad. None of this is random. This is all part of why I get up in the morning. It's very central. And when something is that close to your heart, you don't want to be like Wile E. Coyote. You don't want to be 8 feet out over the cliff before you look down and say, "Oh." No. Can somebody please caution me when I'm getting up towards the edge? I'd rather know. And that's what wisdom keepers are for. Lionel, that's why our friendship has blossomed. That's why Jack is my best friend. Heath is a wisdom keeper. Rich is a wisdom keeper. Heath and Rich are both much more religious than me, but they're good, honest men. And they'll let me know when I'm out of line, when I'm not spending enough time with the kids, when I'm not, patient enough with the kids or with Kristen. Right. These people give me family advice. They give me life advice, and I'm a better man for it. Well, and that's where Steve Eckert's email it's on point. Like, and what's interesting, you look at the podcast. This is a 3-part 47-part trilogy, right? I'm jealous,
right?
Because Jack had the 47-part trilogy. I only got a 37-part trilogy. So I'm a little jealous, but at least I was part of it, so that's okay. So, but as all trilogies go, what's the low part of every trilogy?
It beats me. It's
part 2.
Is it?
Yeah. Why would you want to go from a great start and a depressing finish? Nobody wants to be depressed when they leave the theater. No. The point of a trilogy, the point of a hat trick is not the second goal.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the third one.
It's the third one. It's how you finish that matters. And this is why Chris Atkins, you're going to have some frustrating scenery, buddy. You're right. But your finishing is world class. You could write an article for any of these magazines and they'd be happy to see it, Chris.
I think you meant Chris Adams.
I'm sorry. That's not Atkins.
But Chris Atkins has a beautiful Texas and Pacific or Western. I forget what it is, Chris, but he's in Texas. He's in Argyle, Texas, home of the fight.
Both of the and I apologize for confusing the names, but both of the Chris's that are listening to this, hopefully, guys, it is how you finish that counts, and it's who you include along the way, because it's about people. And that Lionel, again, you're not a worrier. I learned that the hard way, but you don't have to go back and forth. When you come to the OC, it's going to be like you've been here all along.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, one of the things you just said there is, you like the criticism. You like people to tell you what you're doing wrong and stuff like that. And the fascinating thing I find about this podcast is I'm really pretty much fed up with people telling me what's wrong with me. However, I really like doing a good job with the podcast, and I am interested. I am glad that Steve wrote in and said this because, number one, it got me to, I sent it on to you because I wanted to have your opinion. And number two, I want to talk about it because I'm really not interested in hurting anybody's feelings unless they show that they're not kind people to other people. Then it gets to be scorched earth. But, generally, I don't like being told what's wrong with me anymore because I've kind of done that and been there and done that. And I mean, we're not going to name names, but I mean, at one point I said to you, you need to be careful when you're talking to certain model railroaders. Don't be mentioning my name because it's not going to be, it's not going to be like, oh, great, Lionel. They're gonna tell you, that guy's off the wall. His bubble's off center. And yet, what I've learned from this podcast is those guys are the minority. These guys that live and breathe this hobby in a way that is, if you're not doing it my way, you're not doing it right. They are an incredible minority. And the difference is the reason that people enjoy your company through the podcast or the Facebook Live events is that for as well as you have done and as much as you've embraced the hobby, it makes people feel like they belong, because you make people feel like you want them to be part of your journey. And that's what I think the podcast has done. It's drawn in a lot of people that felt like they were outsiders and made them feel like they're insiders.
And, it's interesting. Like I reserve, you look at like the Facebook thing, and a lot of people have Facebook tried, requested Facebook friendships, which I'm very humbled by. But Facebook for me is very much a personal thing with the family and family friends, and it's not something where I push that to limitless bounds. But none of that is, like I said, none of that is meant to, disparage anyone or look down on anyone at all. Because I feel that we have a hobby, and it's the reason it's the greatest hobby in the world. And I agree with Ken Patterson, the dude, 100%. Hopefully he hears this. He's a leader in the hobby because he's moved beyond the fray. It's almost like when you build a deck over your backyard that's full of gnats. When you build a deck over your backyard, it's still your backyard. It's still your property. The deck might suck, but it's over the backyard, and therefore there's no gnats. And what Ken Patterson has done with his show is he's risen above the gnats.
All right. Time out. Hang on a minute.
You don't like metaphors?
Oh, you lost me on that one. You lost me. You build a deck that's above your yard that's full of gnats. You mean
no.
You mean the yard is full of gnats.
Yeah.
But the deck is nice, so now you're over top of it.
Is that what I said? Oh, I got too passionate.
Yeah, see, that's a problem. You're never passionate enough.
No, I love it. I love it. But that's, Ken Patterson rises above the din and delivers, I think, is a really insightful view into what's going on, what's neat in the hobby. And I think the AML Nation, where you have a kinship with Ken, you appeal to everyone in the hobby. Anybody that is interested in listening is going to love the AML. I think there are people that come in with their own agendas and their own prejudged situations, right? As we talked about. And look, that's okay. That's how they're going to embrace the hobby. That's fine. That's fine. One of the things that is positive about the challenges you see in print media these days, right? Everybody hears what's negative about it. And we all would like, Model Railroader and Railroad Model Craftsman and Model Railroad News and all of the publications. We would love them to last forever. And so, guys, get out there and buy an issue. If you want to see it last, you need to get involved, and you need to buy an issue, and you need to write an article or get in contact with the editor and ask what you can do. We all have a responsibility to share, what the spirit has given us. We are all conduits for that. And this is one of the things that my buddy Heath, when I got my first cover on Model Railroader and then my first cover on Railroad Model Craftsman a year later, one of the things we were at Crescent, up at the station in Crescent, Pennsylvania, which is still viable and open for reservations for anybody that's interested. It's one of the greatest rail fan experiences you can have in modern times.
And where's Crescent? Just give people a rough idea.
Crescent is 15 railroad miles west of Horseshoe Curve in central western Pennsylvania in the Allegheny Mountains.
Right. And what's the name of the tunnel on the western end of the curve?
There's no tunnel till you get to the top of the hill.
Gallitzin.
Yeah. Gallitzin. Yeah. Yep. So it's 3 miles from the Gallitzin tunnels.
Well, and I think it's important, though, and I think I'm going to be contrary to partly what you just said there. Is I understand what you're saying about, people need to send in articles and that, but it's important to remember, I think one of the things that the AML does is it doesn't matter about your level of ability. we all want you to be part of the community. And I think it's really important to make sure that not everybody has Dave Abeley's enthusiasm or Dave Abeley's energy or Dave Abeley's ability. And so that's okay. Like, it's okay. You don't have to build a layout like Dave. And maybe all you'll ever accomplish is, slapping together a couple of Walther's kits. But that's what we want you to do, is slap together a couple of Walther's kits and enjoy it. We've got a guy in the AML. His name's Roger Coleman. And I interviewed him a little while ago and hasn't been on yet. And that's the problem with this podcast. There's way too many people to talk to. But Roger's a classic example of what the hobby has to offer. He got involved in the hobby not that long ago. He's, middle-aged guy, and he's also a fan of, he's a music guy. But the hobby is giving him so much just by being there and giving him the opportunity to do something and meet all these people. And it's really important. I think it's really important to point out that I guess what I was trying to say, when we were interviewing Jack, is like, I get it that you guys have done really well at New Jersey Transit, but they want to hear the like it's fine that Jack is an introvert and he's a detail guy, and yeah, I could have let him gone on. My thought was at my end, the ribbing probably was a little bit over the top. But at my end, I'm thinking, Jack, if you keep going and going, you're going to put everybody to sleep. And you're an interesting guy, and people want to hear what it is you got to say. So let's cut it down here so that we can fit it into, one volume of the encyclopedia. Like Steve says, let them talk. Well, that doesn't work because not everybody wants to hear it go on and on and on forever.
Well, but I think where Steve's point is so salient is that Steve wants to make sure that everything we have to say gets said. And that's where, look, I agree with him, but I also trust experts to be experts. And there was a couple of times it was over the top. I'll admit I was a little frustrated, but that wasn't because of anything you wanted. It was because of what you knew your listeners wanted. It wasn't about you. It was about getting the story out. And so you had enough detail to make the story and you moved through it, and it was time now to complete the story. It was time to get to the next topic. Like we finally got to talk about Babbies. You loved the Babby story.
Well, you know what? Our buddy Tracy Boyd, the official flight attendant of the AML network, she sent me a message telling me how much she loved part 3. Thought it was fantastic. Actually, part three. Actually, like I that's one of my all-time favorite podcasts that I've ever been involved with. And it's actually one of them. And of course it's you're clouded when you're looking at podcasts in general if you've been on some. But the flow, part 3 was a grand slam. Part 3, you're losing, and you're down 8-1 at the top of the 9th. And they strike the first guy out and half the fans leave, the game's over. Part 3 was not only the first base hit, it was then the home run that drove in 2 runs. And then it was a couple different crazy plays. Then it was an error, an earned error. And then it was a grand slam, walk off, goodbye. We'll see you next season. That was a great podcast. And it captured the essence of what Jack means to me all at once. And that's the thing. I'm so grateful for the long form interview that you do as part of this, Lionel, and that you and Bruce sit through these long talks of all these different people. You guys allowed Jack to come out of his nutshell. Where my nutshell is behind me, and I get slammed and then have to go back into the nutshell to figure out what has happened. Jack takes time to like a flower in the spring. He takes time to bloom, and over months, years, even decades in our relationship, I'll learn new things about something that Jack and I went through together years ago. And I'll say, I was thinking about that just the other day, and I really
appreciated the way that you carried yourself, or I really didn't like the way you did that. I don't. Why did you do that? Like, that screwed everything up. And it's like, and Jack will think he'll percolate on this stuff for years. No kidding. So the long form interview is the only way to crack open what is the Onondaga cutoff, and why is it what it is, and why is it compelling to the builder and to the planner and to the operator, and where Rich fits into this whole equation, and why I'm forever grateful for my friendship with Rich Wisniewski. And I don't. He's such a humble guy. Like I don't know that he. I don't know that he sees it as clearly as it is. But where I was never able to fully translate Jack, and that's part of the reason Jack and I we drifted apart a couple times, is that I was on to other things, and I should have worked harder on my relationship with Jack sometimes than I did, because I was hurt or I was lonely or whatever, circumstance sometimes. Rich is he's a beautiful translator. Rich's patience and intelligence allow him to download Jack's intellect and vision and translate it to something other people can understand. Other people can dispatch the OC, but only a few. Other people can train master the OC, but when you train master the OC, Rich will make the paperwork, and his paperwork is you can see it. You can see how it works.
Well, see, this is a perfect example. This is a perfect example of what Steve's talking about and what I'm talking about, why I wanted to do this. Is this some sort of trick? Is this some sort of like candid camera thing? Because I'm listening to you talk about Rich and how, and Jack, and I'm thinking, like when we did the remote ops,
the roundtable, that was cool.
Yeah, that was good. It turned out really good. Almost within a day or an hour or whatever, Rich sends me a text saying, "I don't think that was very good."
Well, look,
and the problem is, people. What I found the hardest to learn about this whole, the two things I found. I try not to talk about this, but you and I have had these private conversations where it's like everything I've done for the last 6.5 years is blah, blah, blah. And I had cancer.
Look, Lionel, let's discuss this.
Let me finish. So
let's go. Here we go.
Yeah. So the thing of it is like what I'm doing. I'm not sure how I can get this out. It's like what you just said. Jack is like I'm standing back. I guess what happens is I stand back and I see all these people. I always thought I was a pretty good judge of character, and this podcast has made me even more. It's like I got X-ray eyes or something. And I see this, and it's like these guys blossom because they're hooked to your wagon. Right. And the podcast it's like I do it because, when I get carried away or when I'm ribbing somebody, I'm thinking, like people go, it's like this, they think that I'm doing this from a script, or they think that I'm thinking ahead of time. And it's like, until you said that thing about how Jack or Rich is, translates and all this, I'm thinking, Dave, they're just trying to keep up. You three guys are having so much fun building the Onondaga cutoff. It's like, it's fascinating to see how you got Rich and Jack, who really aren't. I don't think Rich is much of an extrovert either, is he? I mean, he every time I talk to him, he's like, the first time I wanted to interview him, he says, "Well, I got nothing to say," and I'm like, "Well, let me be the judge of that."
Yeah, he's an introvert's introvert, and
I don't think so. I think he's just. I think most people just need somebody friendly to talk to. The thing that I've found is that most people just want to be talked to and not be afraid. Like I don't get up in the morning and say to myself, "Okay, who can I make fun of today?" That doesn't happen ever. I don't get. No. I don't get. I didn't. No. I don't sit down. Not one single hour goes by when I go, "Okay, it's 2:00. Who can I make fun of before 3:00?"
Lionel, you're way too thoughtful for that, and that's. I don't think that's not even the genesis of the discussion. And introvert extrovert, for what it's worth, this is actually a scientific study that was done by the Myers-Briggs corporation, Myers-Briggs Personality Assessment. There's a company. There's actually a company. I believe it's a woman and her niece, or a woman and her daughter, that created this personality assessment tool, and it's something that's been used in large corporations worldwide for years and years and years, like since the 20s.
Well, I'll tell you right now, I'd fail.
No, but there is no failure. All it does is tell you what your natural inclination is in a neutral environment. So, without going too far into it, introvert, extrovert, right? Introverts, their natural state is independence. It's by themselves. They get energy from quietude by themselves. Extroverts are of other people. They get energy from other people. Introverts can act extroverted. Extroverts can act introverted. But the point is that your natural state, either you enjoy sitting at your workbench just building models for yourself, or you enjoy sharing it with the world in operating sessions and putting it on Facebook and all these other things. That's one of the reasons the hobby is so huge, is that we've got lots of both. So, and it's not a judgment. It's not that introvert is better than extrovert or extrovert is better than introvert. And it's also not absolute. It's a scale. It's a curve. So there are people that are mildly extroverted or mildly introverted and enjoy time on both sides of the fence. I'm an extrovert. I love people. I get energy from people, but I do enjoy sitting at my workbench and building a model. That's where I'm sitting right now. Or having a conversation with just you. I love it. Like, it can go both ways. So that's where this long form interview is so important, is that it lets us explore some of that grayness. And, I guess that's my wagon, the OC, but my vision for a model railroad was never mine. It was always operating sessions. I always wanted other people here. I love sitting on someone else's layout, waiting for a clear. I'll sit at a stop signal. I'll drink my Coca-Cola, or if they allow beer at the operating session, I'll have a beer or a cup of coffee, and I'll shoot the breeze with the people around me, and I'll wait I'll wait an hour, whatever. Watch trains go by. It's all good. Like, that's railroading. That is railroading, because railroading is people.
Yeah.
And the best model railroading is people.
Yeah, like I think the hobby, the social media has exposed the fact that a lot of model railroaders are really not introverts. They don't really want to be in their basement by themselves all the time, and it's given them an outlet.
They didn't realize there was this many people to share. Just like Jack and I had no idea that all these important model railroads were in New Jersey, or that anybody cared what we were doing. Now, I looked up to your article. I loved your column. Your column in Model Railroader was the grassroots column. It was the column that appealed to the kids like me, that at 17 had no ability to create an Allegheny and Lackawanna Southern. I couldn't have created a Virginia, Ohio, or an Allegheny Midland, or a Utah Belt, or a Cat Mountain in Santa Fe, or anything Rand Hood was doing, or the list goes on and on and on. Right? I wasn't there, but I could relate to working on one kit, or to reading your opinion piece, and I loved it. It was great. It reached out to people like me that were not part of the in crowd.
So now, how are we going to solve this problem that when I speak out during the podcast and it comes across the wrong way? How are we going to solve this problem?
I don't know that it's a problem as much as it is an awareness. And that's where, you let experts be experts. Steve is a longtime listener, Patreon or not, doesn't matter. Longtime listener. When someone sends you a comment that's thoughtful, well put together, we'll consider it. It's what you're doing is not wrong, and it never has been. And that's the reason it's so popular. I mean, my friend, this podcast has changed the lives of a lot of people, and you deserve a lot of credit for that. Part of that's the cancer, buddy. Part of that's surviving things that you didn't ask for. Some of the family strife, some of the frustrations, right? Look, everybody that listens to the podcast, buddy, I'm an odd duck. You're an odd duck. A lot of us are odd ducks. And Thank God for that. Thank God.
Will you quit saying that, for crying out loud?
There is nothing wrong with that. Come on.
I don't think it is odd so much as I like the word unique. You know what? I think.
Oh, listen to this. Listen to this.
Well,
I like the word, unique. I'm singular. No, you're just weird, buddy, and it's okay. It's good to be weird. Normal is boring. There's nothing about what I do here that's normal.
Well, yeah, that's actually, I had that thought the other day when I was thinking about having this discussion, and I'm thinking, I don't think it's me that's off whose bubble's off center. I think it's
it's Dave.
No, I think it's the people.
Dave.
It's the people who think my bubble is off center.
Look, anybody that has to tell you that they think your bubble is off center has an insecurity problem.
Yeah.
If they can't handle somebody being themselves, well, they have some homework to do. And it's interesting, like listen to Marty McGurk's podcast a couple times. Rich had pointed that out to me a while back. Marty's a character. I met him in passing at the...
There's a question. Why is it that people that have personality have to be designated as characters? Why is that? Why did somebody that takes a bucket of cheese balls and takes a picture of himself, which takes all of 2 minutes to post it, take the picture and post it on Facebook? Why is that? Why is he a character? Why is that guy the character and the other people are the normal ones? I think it's the other way around, personally.
Well, that's because you are normal in the character realm. But when you look at most people, it doesn't occur to them to take a risk like that. You're a risk taker. You've always been a risk taker. It's one of the things I look up to about you. You're more of a risk taker than I am.
Well, maybe that's the what's the word? You know words that were better than I do. That's the core of this discussion, is that when I'm doing these interviews, I really take the risk of pretty much just saying what I'm thinking at the time, because this is not meant to be a rude statement, but I do this podcast because it's fun. Period. End of sentence. There's no other reason to do it other than it's fun. And if I have to start changing my personality to make people more, to make it easier for people to listen to, then it'll stop being fun, and then there won't be a podcast anymore.
What I'll offer to you is that it's not. I don't think that's the core. See, I think it's an important point. It's not that the core of it is that it's fun. The core of it is that it's bringing people together. You started it, and we started the podcast talking about this. You started it because it was fun. You keep doing it because it's fun, and you should keep doing it in whatever way that's fun. People can come or leave as they see fit. All of us can. That's our right. But what's different about the AML, and thanks to you lifting the veil, what's different about the Onondaga Cutoff is that it's not about fun per se. Yes, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Both of them are a lot of fun, but it's about bringing people together.
But wouldn't this be a true statement? You never started. You didn't start doing those Facebook Lives to bring people together. You did it because, this might be kind of cool or fun to do. I'm going to give this a try. Like, I would think you and I are both the same, where the entire thought process stops. You stop trying to convince yourself to do it when you have this thought. That might be fun. I think I'll give that a try. And it's like, that's to me, it's the end. That's it. That's in a nutshell. It's like,
that's part of it. But again, don't forget that, you had the AML. That was your idea. The Facebook Lives was not my idea. That was Rich's idea.
Yeah, but you're the...
So now it was fun. I love telling the story. I love sharing that which I've created with the help of the expert help of others, with anybody that is interested. It's a privilege, and I'm super excited because I've got an article on Model Railroader in a few months, and an article on Railroad Model Craftsman again after the new year. Like,
am I mentioned at either of those?
Wait, I thought you craved union.
Would it kill you just to like?
That sounds a lot like distinction. I don't know.
I mean, would it kill you to use like one sentence and all this stuff you've written just to?
Have you read all the articles?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, sure.
Let me know when you've read all the articles.
Okay. So what am I going to do here? How do we make Steve happy? Because we can't just let you guys talk, because it would go on for hours and hours and hours, and I would fall asleep and land on one of the switches and turn it off.
I think what's important for all of us to realize, and I say this in the utmost sincerity, is that part 2 was part of the continuum that was known by that point in that second podcast. We knew darn well it was going to part 3. And in life, we all have to back up sometimes and realize that a hard experience or a frustrating experience, sometimes the spirit, right? Sometimes the community, sometimes the greater power, whatever you'd like to call it. Sometimes it demands a longer time frame than is in our current vision, in our ability to see at any given point. And part 2 needs to be considered in hindsight as part of a trilogy, not as a unique, independent section. And so what you did in that is fine. You should do it again, because not for nothing, Jack and I both need to get our eggs cracked.
Yeah.
We're both pretty good at what we do in life.
Yeah.
And we're very, very lucky to be able to have the right combination of background, intellect, perseverance, persistence, and support to make those things happen. It is not guaranteed. It's not even common. We're very, very, both of us are very, very lucky. But one of the things that you get is an ego, and having an egg cracked every once in a while over your face, that's a healthy thing.
Yeah, that's something I don't want to end up as thinking.
No, but you're also in a different spot. I'm 44 years old. My dad's dead. My uncle's dead. My dad's cousin's dead. My boss retired. There's no one holding me accountable in any part of my life besides me and my wife, who gives me a longer leash than I deserve. Definitely. So I am grateful to have a, healthy reminder sometimes that I need to, hey, whoa. Hey, you got to think, Dave, how about we talk about this tomorrow? Why don't you think about it a little bit? Or, did you consider this? And it's like, well, no, shut up. I didn't know. And it's, well, that's me saying, God damn it. I should have known the difference. So, both Jack and I benefit from a good, honest cajoling sometimes, because look, life is not a straight line. You have to adjust as you go along, but you have to know who you trust. And, the beauty of this long form interview, and I'll say it till the day I'm dead, is that it gives people time to work through some of these issues. And it gives time, at least in our relationship between you and I, for me to learn from you. And I'm very grateful for that, because you've got a lot of perspective that I don't have yet, because I'm not old enough. Did I ever tell you about my superintendent, the guy that was working right below me when I first got the general superintendent's job at Transit? Everett Lopes, Lopes. He's a Portuguese guy. So you think it'd be Lopez, but nope, it's Lopes. Everett Lopes. And I knew him when I first hired out at Transit. He was managing stations when I was in the bridge group. I came over to the stations group, and he was still there. And at first, there was a lot. There was a lot of resentment. He was a guy that was an electrician by trade. I didn't know much besides that. I knew he was 30 years older than me, but he didn't appreciate that I got hired at a higher level. And we went. Again, it was not. There was no animosity, but there was definitely awareness and some tension. So, life goes on, times go, he gets promoted, I get promoted, back and forth. A job I went for, I didn't get. A fella who was in a different position at Transit came in, a guy named Bill Morrison, who was my last boss before I got to my current job. He actually held my job before he left. And I was furious that my 38-year-old or 37-year-old self, who thought I was the best thing since sliced bread when it came to NJ Transit, would lose out to this former Amtrak boomer. Like, how, you got to be kidding me. I was livid. But the wisdom keepers, Heath, Jack, my brother Ben, my wife, my dad at the time, Dave, what are you going to do? It is what it is. If you can't stand it after 2 years, get out of the department. I was not happy. So went through it. Everett went through it. We all went through it. Bill Morrison ended up being the best breath of fresh air. One of the first people that actually taught me what management was. And he taught the same thing to Everett. Everett came out of his shell. So Bill Morrison retires. I finally am able to go for that job and get that job. And now Everett, now my job, my former job is vacant. And Bill said, who I gotten very close to in a couple of years before he retired, after he cajoled me and pushed me and frustrated me and corrected me and broke that ego all the way down to say, Dave, what are you doing? This makes no sense. Look at this. And it's like, you're right. You're right. Oh my God, you're right. How did I not see this? How could I not have seen this coming? So I promoted Everett based on Bill's advice. So Everett became my right-hand man for the first time on the railroad when I was holding Bill's old position that I thought I was ready for 5 years earlier, which I clearly was not. And Everett and I became inseparable friends and partners. By the time Everett decided to retire, again, 30 years older than me, I mean, this is a guy that had been born in Portugal, moved to Angola in Africa. His father worked for the African Railroad, and he moved his family down there when he got the opportunity. So they were living in Angola, and the door got kicked in one night. There was some strife on the horizon. They kind of ignored it. His dad had a job on the railroad as a station agent and a station. So he entered the timetable train order on the road to the coast. Door gets kicked in one night, and it's one of the railroad employees that says, they're coming. There's one train ahead of the guerrillas. They're coming. We're all getting on the train. God help us all. Everett's father wakes up, Everett and a couple other kids. They leave with a few bags of clothing and some dried food that they had from living in the frontier in Africa. They got on a boxcar, and it was a 3-day ride to the coast right ahead of the revolution. And they got on a ship and they rode a freighter as a family all the way back to Portugal in exile because they got literally run out of Angola on the tide of this unbelievable story. Then they get out of Portugal. They emigrate to the United States. Land in the United States. Everett, it's 19 years old, becomes an electrician, gets a job on the railroad, becomes my second-hand guy. And he says, Dave, how do you feel? And I said, Everett, I feel like you've got a crystal ball and I don't. Where do you get these memos, buddy? And he says, Dave, there's something we used to say in Angola. And I'm like, Everett, what are you talking about? He's like, Dave, only the old monkeys have the calluses on their ass. Do you think that experience teaches you? And I was like, wow, okay. And it was one of those centering moments in my career. And all the credit goes to Everett, who allowed this young kid to be my right-hand guy was a guy with 30 more years experience.
So then what is the experience of us doing the Jack Travaccino trilogy and Steve sending us this email? What was our final take on this whole thing?
Steve, it's a gift. What you gave Lionel is a gift. And because Lionel is a man of character and someone that can take a ribbing like he judges other people to be, he forwarded it over to me to take a look at it. I actually talked it over with Jack.
Oh, did you really? Well, you're telling me.
I did, just verbally. I
understand that, but you guys. I wanted because Jack. It took you an hour and 40 minutes to get to the part where this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Are you surprised?
Are we going to have to turn this into a 3-part trilogy?
Are you surprised? Don't tell me you're surprised. I thought you said you were good at this.
I'm not. You say I'm good at it. I never said I'm good at it. You call me an expert, and I'm like, I barely understand. I can barely twirl the knobs. Don't call me good at it.
You don't get to choose that, sir. That's not how life works. Other people get to determine whether you're an expert.
I'm not an expert at this. I don't even understand what the hell I'm doing, so I'm not an expert.
I mentioned it to Jack because it involved Jack, and I didn't want to get back to you until I had talked to the person that it was about.
Okay, so what did Jack have to say?
Part 2 was a little dicey, but part 3 ended fine.
Okay, that was it. Part 2 was dicey, and part 3 was fine. That was it.
That's Jack.
Seriously, that was the entire conversation.
I mean, somebody wrote in about that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm not offended. I said, okay, me neither. Lionel, why do you think it took us three trilogies to get it out of Jack, buddy? Like that he doesn't communicate on our wavelength. None of the rail service planners do, but especially Jack. So what Steve needs to know is that next time he thinks you've gone a little too far, he should write in.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely, Steve.
And
we're interested in your opinions. We're interested in everybody's opinions because I'm not saying I would ever change the way I'm doing it, but I'm certainly interested in people's opinions. Absolutely.
And I've never talked to Steve except hearing his opinion through this email, but I'm going to argue that Steve doesn't want you to change what you're doing. He just wants to make sure that it's continuing the way that it's always gone. There's a reason he's a long-term listener.
Well,
like me.
I can't stop being who I am.
You are, and we love you for what you are. We Lionel, honest feedback from a man with integrity is increasingly rare. And we're all lucky to have you to do this. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. You are someone I trust. You are someone who's given me invaluable guidance time and again. You're the only person that called the success of the Signal book. And yeah, your nation had a lot to do with that, which I appreciate, of course. But you're still the only one to call it, which says a lot.
It was like as obvious as that just drives me nuts that Kalmbach is so in the dark about the fact that now you have the ability for, great idea, Rich, way to go. But I mean, the fact that people can now watch you operating your layout, it's like the opportunity to do. It's like this podcast. I mean, come on. I'm not an expert. I don't play one on TV. I don't even think I'm any good at it. And it's kind of like, the things that are available to us in the future, this hobby is absolutely going to explode because
it is exploding. It's not going to explode. It is exploding.
Yeah, it really is.
There are more lay people involved in my model railroad world now than ever, just thanks to Facebook.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, even the last one, which only got advertised a couple of days ahead of time, it's well over 2,000 views.
And how come I don't get to be a remote operator on these things?
Well, it's actually you bring that. I'm glad you brought it up because you need to be qualified first, and you've done it once, but you're going to do it twice. After which you'll be qualified.
Oh, okay.
So actually,
well, wait a minute. See, that plan doesn't. See, that doesn't. The first time you told me. See, this is what's wrong with me. This is what's wrong with me. You said to me, "Oh, well, you have to be qualified." And I immediately think, or not immediately, within a few, and I'm thinking, okay, all right. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, wait a minute. Martin Jenkins and Gordy got to run trains on one of those Facebook Lives, and then they weren't qualified. How did that happen? You see, guys like you and Rich and Jack are always going to trip yourself up. That's why I can't come and operate on your railroad because I can't stand. One of the things I absolutely cannot stand is people who have rules and then don't follow them. Drives me nuts. It absolutely drives me nuts.
Right.
I'm all about, hey, you want to have rules? I'm in, but let's follow them. You got to follow them.
Sure.
And most people.
So
can't.
did you review the qualifications of Martin and
No.
No?
No.
So what are you upset about?
Well,
What particular part drives you nuts?
Well, how many times?
What rule wasn't I following?
How many times had they operated the layout before they were on one of those Facebook Lives?
None.
Exactly.
But they told me they wanted the paperwork and they read it.
Oh, okay. Well, do you think if I had read it, I'd even tell you? Now this Steve.
And now you're squirming. Now you're squirming a little bit now. Oh, you stepped right in that one. You walked right into the trench on that.
No, let's get to the heart of what people don't understand about me. Do you think that if I had read that paperwork, I'd even tell you? No way. I'd be like, I didn't read it.
No, you were honest.
I would have said it anyways, because you guys, that's probably what the part of this. We can finish up with this. You guys you were easy to stir up.
No, of course.
Right? I mean, it's easy, and it's kind of like guys like me, smart asses like me, who find guys that are fun to poke are kind of like, nah, this isn't fair now. Because it's like, you send all the paperwork and all I got to do is go, well, I didn't read that. And you can see their eyes popping out of their head go, you didn't read it. No, I never bothered reading that.
But this is the thing, right? It's not about the OC remote operation is not about you or me or Rich or Jack. It's about everybody involved with it. And so, I don't want someone doing it that's going to look for every fault and say, oh, well, I didn't know, but I don't know what that's because you didn't. No, look, everybody has a role to play. Now, when you're doing it on site, you're going to remember it. It's not a big layout. It's once you've run a train around the whole thing, it's not a big deal because you can see it, you can touch it. And to me, that's the way I learn is by seeing it, touching it, making mistakes, and then, try not to make the same mistake twice. Remote operations is different because I don't have enough cameras down here for people to see what the heck they're doing, except for the one. So I think you'll be more comfortable and everybody else will have a better time when you're more comfortable if you've done it a couple times. That's all.
That's kind of like a backhanded way of saying you're going to screw it up and we don't want to deal with it. It's
a backhanded way of saying do it again and then we'll go.
You missed the whole point.
No, I think you look. The point is that it's going to be a great time. All right, and that's my responsibility is to make it a great time. We'll get there.
Sure,
absolutely. We'll get there.
Absolutely.
Maybe. You got it. It's a both feet thing.
I don't know if I would fit in with those guys. I really don't think I would fit in with those guys.
It's the only reason that it's important to know the railroad is because it's not fun when somebody runs through a stop signal. Everything then it's a pain in the butt because you've got derailments, you've got collisions, especially with remote operations because you can't see what's going on. It's just a bunch of lines on a computer screen, right?
Right.
So it takes time to figure that out. Once you're comfortable, you said it yourself. The first time around, you're like, eh. After the second or third time, it made some sense, and you're like, oh. Now I can kind of see what the point is. Well, do that one more time, and then we're ready for prime time.
And so why are you skirting around the issue that Martin and Gordy got to be on prime time when they never run the railroad at all?
They read all the paperwork.
How do you know that?
Because they told me they did.
Therein lies the main difference between you and me. You and I will be friends forever and ever. But therein lies the main difference between you and me. Well, they told me they did. And that's all I had to do was say, I told you I did.
Yep.
I would never. I would have never said that in a million years.
You would never have said that in a million years
because
I think they did, and I think that you didn't. You told me not. You didn't. So we'll get through it now. Admittedly, even with them reading the paperwork, we had some snafus that night.
Did you have any snafus when I was doing it?
No.
Boom. There you go, buddy.
Just saying.
Saying.
So it does go both ways. It does go both ways. And so, look, one of the things that's most frustrating about this whole pandemic is that I really feel that you being here would permanently seal any doubts you have about how much fun you have here, how you'd fit in. I really believe that. Like, if you like switching, you like switching. If you like paperwork, you like paperwork. If you like running trains, you like running trains. Just don't run through a stop signal. And that's wherever you want to fit in, you fit in here. If you want to push yourself, you can push yourself. If you want to just run trains and if you don't want to run you just want to watch trains, it's fine. It's fine. That's what we do. It's a layout for the operation. That's why it's here. So, Gordy and Martin, that's the other thing that's sort of funny is that Gordy and Martin, they're much further away than you. And so when this all came down, the whole remote operations thing, I didn't even realize how long it was going to take for us to actually meet in person and shake hands and do our thing, And here we are over a year later with someone that I should have met 10 years ago. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Well, me too.
Like,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's I don't know. These are wild times, but I can't wait for you to be here. And I'm really excited for whatever we need to do to make that happen. If it's more remote operations, that's great. If it's not, that's fine too. You know, but you have a spot here whenever you want to come.
I've told you this before, but you're one of the kind of people that pushes the human race forward. You're one of those people that makes other people feel like they count, and that's what pushes the human race forward. I had I have this saying called "Live like it matters," and that stumbled upon me one day when I was going to the hospital, and I couldn't get around a particular person, and I thought, man, like, live like it matters, like you got some place to go or something to do, even if you don't. And I've had an experience this week that about 12, 13 years ago, I befriended somebody, and it came back in spades. It came back to me because I took the time to treat this person well. What happened to me this week was unbelievably spectacular. And it does. It matters. It's important to live like it matters all the time, because what you do today might make a difference 12 years from now.
How you treat people matters.
What you do matters. Everything you do, the way I used to always say, the way you eat your lunch, the way you drive your car, the way you walk through a door. You may never be able to see it, feel it, or touch it, but trust me, the way you do things makes a difference.
Yeah. And again, I look up to you for that. And I love that you bust my balls that, well, why do they get to, your new friends have run on the railroad? Why haven't I? Like, these are good, honest questions. We're close friends, and you should ask honest questions like that. Like this, and this is why Steve should send those emails. Because the AML is a network of people that care.
No,
we would rather know when you're not happy than to have you fade into nothingness. That's not what we're looking for here. We're looking for here is genuine 2 feet in, jump in. Don't worry about the temperature of the water. It's going to be fine. We'll figure it out. But jump in. And Steve did. Steve did.
The lesson to be learned here is, if you're okay with the fact that we may not agree with you all the time, then jump in with both feet.
Yeah. That's what we're here for. And that's Lionel, that's what you've created. You've opened the door to a lot of us that thought that we were alone.
Yeah. And it's important for people to remember, I just did this because I thought of it. Be cool. And again, I don't know. You and I have talked about this at great length off the air, but and I've had this conversation with my friend Tony Cook too. Unfortunately, so many of my stories nowadays go, and then I had cancer. Like, I started this 10 days before I was diagnosed with cancer. So, I mean, I understand that it means a lot to people, and I understand that they think that without me, it wouldn't have happened and all that. But at this point, I'm just, my favorite saying is, I don't care how the AML started. I don't care how the AML exists. I don't care how it keeps going. I'm just glad I got to be part of the party.
I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah.
And the gratitude, and this is where I'd like to finish. I think the gratitude, this is something that one of the things, and again, I wasn't raised Jewish. My dad was Jewish, but having affiliation with that side of things, one of the things they focus on is this whole principle of dayenu. And it means in Hebrew, it would have been sufficient. It's an expression of gratitude for, thank you for the experience so that I can learn. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And so, Steve, write us another email.
Look what you did, Steve. Yeah, Steve, write another email, because look what you did. You created another whole podcast.
And I'm a better person for it. I think.
Absolutely.
I think the podcast, look, it's got a life of its own. It's got an opportunity to grow and learn as its own entity. It's something that brings us together. And that's it. It's not an egoic creation. It's really a creation of union. It's for bringing people together. It's listen to us listening to others. It's about others. It's about people, like the Real Railroad is about people. Like the Onondaga cutoff is about other people. It's not about distinction or singularity. It's about bringing people together. If we choose that, all right, zoom way back over everything. If we all, men, women, children, adults, any religion, any persuasion, any nationality, if we choose union, it's a conscious choice. If we choose coming together, focusing on what we have in common, as opposed to what divides us, it's a conscious choice. It's a hard thing to say, right? Hard thing to do, much harder thing to do. But if we can do it, the rest takes care of itself, guys. The rest takes care of itself. All we have to do is find a reason to come together. And I think the AML is a start. It's a start. It's an honest, transparent start where someone can write in a well-intentioned email with some constructive criticism, and the evil overlord would discuss it with someone as crazy as Uncle Dave. It's perfect.
And
here we are.
And if it hadn't been for Rich Winiski telling you about this podcast and you having to learn it, we wouldn't have this great friendship. And also, I wouldn't have found out that you think Gordy Robinson and Marty Jenkins are much better operators than me. But that's neither here nor there.
Who said that? You have a complex, man. You have an operator complex.
The thing I like the best, one of the things I like best about our friendship was in the early days. You were like, I'd say stuff, and you'd be like, "Is he serious?"
Yeah.
I don't know. Is he? Maybe he's. I don't think he's serious. I'm pretty sure he's not serious. Okay.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm going to say something back. I remember the first time you did, and I'm like, all right, now we're off to the races. Okay, we got to wrap this up. We've talked too long. I'll tell you, we talked too long, so we got to stop. So now the way we end viewer mail is we noticed many years ago that Joe Piscopo's career was after he left Saturday Night Live. He had a couple of good years there, but his career basically dwindled to where he had a talk show on an AM station somewhere in New Jersey. So what we do is we reach out to Joe at the end of every viewer mail and say, "Listen, Joe Piscopo, we know your career's struggling. We know you're trying to get your career going again. So we've left instructions with the receptionist that if you want to be on the show, just call in and she'll put you right through and we'll get you on the show." So,
fair enough.
Yeah. So that's
so Joe Piscopo. All you got to do is follow the advice, buddy. Let's go.
And we always apologize to Rhode Island because occasionally we'll insult Rhode Island. And the thing, do you know what the one thing it's important to remember about Rhode Island, Dave?
No.
It's like you can just go around it. It's like gum on a sidewalk. It's so small you can just go around it like gum on a sidewalk.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's fair enough.
Yeah. Because really, why would you want to go through it?
Well, the only thing that's worse is Connecticut.
Oh, great. Now you just insulted all the people in Connecticut.
Well, I love the people in Connecticut, but driving through Connecticut is that's not a good experience.
Well, don't you have to drive through it when you go to Springfield?
Go to Springfield? Yeah, that's exactly my point. That's the least favorite part of my drive on the way to Springfield.
I'm gonna. You know what?
What?
Man, I'm gonna hold your feet to the fire right now.
Let's do it.
At every Springfield for the last 3 or 4 years, we have the AML dinner on Saturday night.
Okay.
Are you going to attend the next one?
I'm hoping to. Yes.
Oh no, I mean the next time you go to when you go to Springfield, you're gonna find something out. We have had this that's another discussion for on the air. I have detailed to you. I have told you in great detail that the next time you go to Springfield and probably other train shows, you're not going to be able to get down the aisle because people are going to want to stop and talk to you about your book and all the other things you've done.
Yeah, you're talking as though my book's going to sell out in 29 days. I don't believe a word you're saying.
Yeah.
How is anybody going to know who I am? Who cares?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't. I'm going to go to a train show and anybody's going to recognize me from Adam. No.
Yeah, it's.
I don't see it.
How many more did they do for the second printing?
2,500.
Am I getting a piece of that?
I don't know. I'm not.
You're not?
No.
Well, you know what? In your next contract, make sure you put something in there that if it goes to a second printing, you need to get a bonus of some sort.
My understanding is that the first contract is that the only bonus is if I go over 10,000 copies, the commission changes.
Oh, we can do that.
And yeah, I haven't told anybody about that. And so when it gets here, I fully expect to push back a little bit and say, guys, we'll see. I don't know the terms of the second contract. Hopefully they've improved it.
Yeah, let's hope they have.
We'll see.
And how about this? Did you know that the AML network is the answer to life, the universe, and everything model railroading related? That was a pearl of wisdom from Tom Jacobs in the year 2016.
I don't disagree with that statement at all. I'm excited to meet Tom Jacobs. I'm excited. His layout is making leaps and bounds progress. Good stuff.
Yep. So this is on the free channel. So for all those of you that are interested, we have a website. It's modelerslife.com. You can email us. Please send in more emails. The viewer mail is usually on the Patreon channel, which, by the way, while we were recording this show, somebody signed up to Patreon. And so the most of the viewer mails are on Patreon. So if you go to the website, modelerslife.com, and right on the front page there, not too far from the top, is a link to how to get to Patreon. And you'll enjoy for 16 cents a day, for 365 easy payments of 16 cents, you can have twice as many podcasts to listen to. And it's important, too. I was saying to somebody the other day, they need to think of it as like talk radio. You don't have to listen to every single podcast. You can just listen to the ones that you feel like you like or whatever. So there's, some people are like, oh, I've fallen behind and stuff like that. And I always feel guilty thinking, well, you're not under any obligation to listen to them.
Well, but I think one of the beautiful things is that look, the hobby ebbs and flows. I actually just put a blog post up tonight on my little blog at onondaga.blogspot.com. If you Google Onondaga Cutoff, Onondaga, you'll see it pop right up. And one of the things I reflect on in this particular blog post is that the hobby ebbs and flows with the seasons. You're more productive, you're less productive. Look, the podcast, the beautiful part about Patreon is that once you sign up, you have all this stuff at your fingertips. It's a quick search in the Patreon engine, and you can find the people you want to listen to. You can find the subjects you want to listen to, and you can do it next time you have a long drive. The whole family falls asleep in the car. Well, it's a perfect time to put on the Bluetooth and listen to the Patreon channel. So, like the hobby ebbs and flows, so too does the AML, and I think it's a powerful tool. It's a great way to always have something to listen to that'll help your understanding of the hobby. It's a small world, but it's a growing world, and it's a great big world all at the same time. It's exciting.
And if you want to email us, it's all you got to do is write modelerslife@gmail.com. That's modelers with one L, like Abelese, not two L's, like Kelly, the modeler simply known as Kelly. What else is there? There's other words within it, or like Lionel. There you go.
There you go.
One L like Abelese, not two L's like Lionel. I should remember that by now. And or you can just go on the website and click on a picture of the angry mailboy's face in a particularly moderately agitated state, and do it that way. And that's pretty much. Oh, and if you want to buy AML merchandise, you go to Modelers Midwest Model Railroad, and their URL is midwestmodelrr.com. Go to the navigation bar and just click on AML, and there's a wonderful wonderland of different AML merchandise.
We're working on some OC merchandise.
Yes,
we're actually getting very close to that.
Good,
for what it's worth,
because we could put it right on the same place, and then people.
We're hoping. Yep, we're hoping.
And will I get a piece of that?
Well, sure. Why not?
I'm kidding. See, that's the problem people don't understand. Is a lot of stuff I say is just
you're like my dad.
Yeah,
you're like my dad. My dad would kid for like 3 minutes, and we'd be like, huh, and then he'd be like, ah, he'd start laughing, and we'd be like, oh my god, he's just kidding. See, when you're the evil overlord and no one gets it, you're changing things and you don't realize it.
Yeah, I suppose.
I'm sure you're going to change your whole stick as a result.
Yeah. All right. So now we come to the most important part, the end. So I'm going to try this without any prodding or pushing or we didn't meet in the parking lot outside ahead of time or anything.
Oh, God help us all. Here we go.
Yeah. So get ready.
I'm blind. Here we go.
Say goodnight, Dick.
How rude.
No. You remember the?
I've never listened to the end of one of these.
Did you remember the show Laugh-In?
No.
Really? You never saw Laugh-In? Then you should look it up on YouTube.
Okay, fair enough.
So, anyways, it was two comedians. I can't remember their names now. Dick, and what was their names? I'm going to look this up on Google just while we're talking here.
I've never been called Dick at the end of a podcast.
No, it's a name.
I know. I'm just trying to be funny, and it doesn't work.
Okay, that was Rowan and Martin's laughing. Dan Rowan and Dick Martin, and at the very end, Dan Rowan was the straight man, and Dick Martin was the other guy. What do you call the opposite of the straight man in a comedy duo? There's the straight man, and there's the other guy.
You got me. I have no idea.
I don't know. The other guy, I guess. That's what you call him.
It works for us.
Yeah. And so at the end of every show, Dan Rowan would turn to his partner, Dick Martin, and say, "Good night, Dick." And he would say,
"Good night, Martin."
Yeah.
I don't know.
I want to go to lunch with you. I want to hang out with you and Jack and Rich. And just, you guys are going to be like, I'm going to be like, I want to go to lunch with you and Jack and Rich and just like sit there with these pie-shaped eyes going, man, you guys. You say goodnight, Dick. It's just like if I had said, say goodnight, Dave, you'd say goodnight, Dave.
Right.
So I say goodnight, say goodnight, Dick, and then usually everybody.
Good night, Dick.
Right. Then everybody that's on the show says goodnight, Dick. And
good night, Dick. Good night, Dick. Good night, Lionel.
And now it's time for the New Jersey Transit Elevator Escalator Report. Take it away, Dave.
Good morning, everybody. Today, number one here on the list is Newark Penn Station number 14. That one needs a step chain adjustment. They got to adjust the lower carriage assembly. Newark Penn Station number 8 is back in service. Secaucus 16 was out overnight for a skirt panel reset, but he's back in service too. Somerville eastbound is still out for its DCA test. We had a sump pump problem, so they should be back on that later this week. And Absecon, the lone elevator there was out overnight. Somebody held the doors open too long, and it's back in service as of this morning.
It's another Lincoln Homer.